Welcome to the Beyond Divorce Embracing Change podcast. My name is Michael Flores, and I will be your host while we explore the complex journey of divorce with empathy, insight, and practical knowledge. Whether you're contemplating separation, in a divorce, or looking for support post-divorce, our episodes provide expert guidance, stories, and strategies to help you through every step of the process. We are actual therapists, helping clients who sit on our couches every day through their difficulties of divorce. You are not alone. Join us as we delve in and find solutions that give you hope again. We're glad you're here.
This podcast is not intended to replace legal or personal help. This podcast is for informational purposes only.
Welcome back, everyone. We're here to talk about technology between homes.
Mm-hmm.
This actually came up, Armando, from someone who submitted a question to us about technology between homes. We thought it was such a good question. We just decided we're going to create a whole podcast on it.
I love it. I think I would encourage our listeners to keep sending us questions and inquiries, and that's how we grow. That's how we learn. That's how we give the people what they want.
Well, we want to learn what's going on in real time.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of times when you're coming to therapy, you're telling us what's already happened.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're telling us what's happening and we can kind of capture that and we start seeing patterns, that's where we get real creative on how to be helpful. So I'm really excited to jump in this with you. So let's where should we start?
Well, I think we should talk about how technology has really changed everything, right? Everything has changed with technology and just parenting. I remember when I got my first cell phone, I was 16, and I got it because I had learned how to drive, and my parents were like, here you go, because if you get stranded on the road, this is what it is. It was one of those big, I'm going to date myself, but it was one of those big brick Nokia blue, kind of, you push it and the screen was green.
It had snake on it?
It had snake on it, and you could not, you had to wait till after 9 o'clock to use your minutes because that was free. And don't you even think about texting somebody because it was like, I don't know, 5 cents a letter or something? I don't remember, but something ridiculous.
Do you remember, though, when we would text, you had to push like the 2-3 times to get the C?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, you got a C.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm a slow texter now, but back then I was like, 1, 2, 3. So a lot has changed.
A lot has changed.
A lot has changed from, I don't want to speak for you, I'm not going to date you, but from when I just know you're a little bit older than me, but
I'm dated. Thanks, man.
I'm not calling you out. I'm just saying, but a lot has changed. And I think that's something to take into consideration when we're dealing with children, especially teenagers. Like, it's a different world. It's a different thing. And technology really has shaped it, how we communicate, access. I mean, back in the day, you didn't see your parent because it wasn't their possession time, and you would call them on a landline. Remember landline?
Oh, yeah. I remember the cord that used to be in the kitchen, and you could like walk through almost every room, and the cord would just, you have to kind of wrap it sometimes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that. You could use that too. No, I'm kidding.
It's frowned upon to do that.
Well, when we were kids, we used to just stretch them and pull them apart, and remember they get all tangled, and yeah.
I had a rotary phone in my room. Yeah, it was cool because it was different. But back then, when you would go to the other parent's house, you didn't have that immediate communication all the time.
Right.
Right? There wasn't texting. There wasn't cell phones. There wasn't messages. There was maybe, AIM, right? AOL messaging, but I don't think
the dial-up thing.
The dial-up thing or the away message. But now, so much of it, like the kids, they have the world at their fingertips. They have communication with their friends, with their parents. And what does that look like when you have a parent that maybe you don't have a great co-parenting relationship with, and they have access to your child all the time? Your child has access to them all the time.
That's the complaint, is like, I can't get rid of the other parent in my home. Mm-hmm. Have you heard it like that? They say it that way.
I've heard it where they're still in my home, right? They're undermining me is what I hear a lot.
Oh, there's the word. Yeah. It's being undermined.
Being undermined. And I think best practice initially, before we get into kind of the problems, I would say best practice is really try and communicate with your co-parent about what cell phone access should look like. I've done sessions with parent, stepmom, mom, stepdad, about what it's going to look like when this child gets a cell phone, right? She was coming of age. We were having a discussion of what that was going to look like. And they were trying to discuss, okay, well, who's going to have the passcode? Who's buying the phone? What is that going to look like? Who has access to that? And it was a really good discussion.
What apps the kid can have.
What apps they can have. What the time frame of, like, can they be on their phone until 1 a.m. or does it turn off at a certain time?
Maybe with the question we should be having with parents is, what's the purpose of the phone? Because it's the one thing that's not, the least thing used on the phone is the phone.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't think anybody, I think Gen Alpha doesn't really, and like later Gen Z doesn't really use the phone. As a phone. They might FaceTime, but like they usually don't use it as a phone.
Well, step one should be, what's the purpose of this device?
Why are we giving this child a phone? Because everybody else in the third grade class has a phone, so all the third graders should have a phone.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not even being
third grade. I know you're not kidding.
I'm not even kidding.
I know you're not. And that's the crazy part about it. You're not kidding. That's about the age the kids want a phone, is the third grade.
That's about it?
Yeah, It's about third grade. But I've seen kindergartners. I actually have seen kindergartners walk out of my kid's school with a cell phone.
When I used to work in schools, I remember one time we were doing a lesson and someone's backpack was ringing, and we were in like first grade or something, and like the backpack was ringing, and it was the kid had brought his cell phone.
Oh my goodness!
It was wild.
Okay,
this was a couple of years ago, so that was even wild too.
Yeah. So let's go into this first part with communication boundaries. It looks like we have, what is this?
Emotional shifts. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
So it's about, what is the communication going to look like? What are the boundaries? What is the purpose of the phone? Is the phone to keep in contact with everybody? Is the phone to play roadblocks with? Is the phone for talking to grandma, FaceTiming? Or is it just so that I bought the phone for you, so I have full access to you all the time?
Well, they don't usually say that, do they?
I mean, they don't say it like that. But it can feel that way sometimes to some parents.
Yes, because it comes in the office and it's said to us that way.
It is said that way. That is the reason why they did that. And it may not actually be that. It may be, but having that discussion of what the phone is, what the limits are, and being able to determine and have an agreement on what that looks like.
When parents do not agree, so I think a kid should have a phone. That's their thing. They should have, that's where their friends communicate. That should be their world.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you might have that parent. But then the other parent goes, oh, no. I need to be able to look in all the apps. I need all the passcodes. I need it. So you have the parent that's way on the other end. In those situations where parents are on two different playing fields on the device, how should they approach that?
I think it goes into discussing, okay, is it about privacy? Is it about access? Like, what is it? What are we looking for? Right?
Okay.
How do we provide privacy for a child? I tend to lean towards privacy is one of those things that you have. It's different for every child, right? Because if you have a child that's constantly getting into trouble or is sneaky, probably don't need a whole lot of privacy. But if you can trust, then you can have that dynamic, which goes back into discussing that trust with that co-parent. If there's no trust in your co-parenting relationship, there's definitely not going to be trust. And then there becomes a power dynamic, right? There's a shift.
Yeah.
And then don't even get me started on, well, I bought the phone.
Well, that's what we lean back on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've seen the other parent fall back on, I purchased the phone, so for that reason, I get to control what happens on that device.
Ownership versus access.
Ooh.
Right? Is it I own it, so I have it, or it's like, but that phone is in my house, so I should have access to it.
Well, that's what the other parent argues.
That's what the other parent,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, you bring it to my home. Then they do this thing where they buy them two phones.
I've seen that many times.
Do you think that's a good thing? Kid has one phone at one parent, has one phone at the other parent's because the other parent doesn't want the other parent to look at the phone?
I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty mixed on that. I have seen it where it works really well, where it and then I have seen it where it just causes more complications for the kid, for the other parent, and so...
Yeah, I'll just say it. I think straight out what it really says is your mother and I or your father and I don't know how to agree on this, and so for you, we're going to do it this way so you can still have a phone. I think that's BS, man. Like, that's really a parental problem, not a child problem, and we're going to fix it through the kid by doing it this way because we can't.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
I mean, it is literally the manifestation of them not getting along, right? It is a clear identification of, well, my parents will get along, so I have two different phones.
Yeah, okay. So
I've got an Android at dad's house and an iPhone at mom's house.
Here's what I tell parents. They don't like this comment because typically you'll have one parent that's a little bit stricter than another, and it's like almost everything. If it's on one category, it's on a lot of categories. But I tell them, like, and I use our license as an example, you have to take the stricter of the two, because then neither one of you feels undermined, right?
I agree.
But you can create an avenue to get further. Like, it's almost like it's not a we can never, it's a win. Like, okay, I think all parents know their kids are probably going to date at some point. But one parent's like, I don't care if they have a boyfriend when they're 12 years old, and they're just old hands in school and whatever else. They come over and they play little games and card games, and I'm watching them the whole time. But the other parent's like, no, they're not dating until they're 16. Like, see, so it's not that we don't agree on the fact that they date. It's when they date.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you take the stricter of the two, they date at 16, right?
Which is safer, right? Like, it's not safer, but there's more maturity there.
There's maturity built into that, right? And so that when I say that to parents, a lot of times the parent that's more lenient feels like, well, I'm never going to have a say. And I'm like, no, it's a dialogue. It's to create a dialogue.
Which would be the same dialogue you would have if they were together, right? It's the same dialogue that you would have together. You would disagree, right? As you're with your spouse, you're trying to say, well, I think the bedtime should be 9 o'clock. Well, I think bedtime really should be 8:30. And you have that dialogue of what it looks like.
So with these devices, do we get parents that are like, okay, I'm going to agree on paper with this parent, but in reality, in my home, I'm going to let you. Okay, so I'm agreeing with your other parent that the phone needs to be put away at 8 o'clock, but in reality, you have the phone till midnight. Like, you have the phone in your room next to your nightstand.
Yes,
and parents allow it all the time.
I see that all the time.
Do you think that just does worse to the parental trust and the co-parenting relationship once it's discovered?
Not only to the parental trust, but also the consistency for the kid. Right?
Oh, there you go.
You're creating an environment where the child can learn to manipulate, which I think we've talked about that numerous times on the podcast. And I know just you and I have talked about it, about you create this environment where the children learn to kind of manipulate and play the parents against each other, which I don't blame a kid. If I'm 14 and my parents don't agree and I want to get what I want, I think Dr. Robinson, I don't know if he said it on the podcast, but that kids are kind of egocentric, meaning that they're kind of me first. And that's part of their job as being children, to kind of grow into.
That's how they understand themselves. They have to go me first.
Exactly.
Right?
And so, well, I want
Some of
this.
us don't grow out of that, though.
No, some of us don't. Some of us don't.
Okay.
But that, when you have two cell phones,
Yeah.
or there's not clear boundaries at both houses, I can play it. I can play it however I want to.
If you're a distractor.
Especially if I'm a distractor.
Oh, it's game time.
If I'm a gatekeeper, then I get really put in the middle, and then I'm trying to like coordinate text messages back and forth from the parents.
I got a kid right now that likes to pull their hair. And parents think that it's an anxiety thing. And I said, what it really is, it's a gatekeeping thing, is the kid can't make you both happy.
So they're
right. The kid's peacemaking, but the kid's taking it out on themselves, right? So they're not going to hurt anyone, but they're doing little anxious tics. And we're claiming that this parent's creating that anxiety, and the other parent claims the other parent's creating the anxiety. When in reality, the child's anxious because of both y'all.
And I think that's the highlight, is that what is in the best interest of the child?
There it is.
Like, what are we doing?
But we do not define that, though, Armando. People use that term, what's in the best interest. What does that mean?
You're right. And I think it depends per kid. Every child's a little bit different. And that's where having those conversations with that co-parent.
Correct.
And if you can't, because a lot of our clients, a lot of people we talk to can't, they struggle with that. Like, they just struggle. Making the best rules for your house is the best thing for you.
I tell parents now, especially going over technology and devices, is do not give counterfeit yeses.
Oh, well, yeah, that's great.
Yeah. You know, when you the other parent wants to do something, you're like, I just don't want to be in an argument, so I'm just going to tell them yes. But in reality, you're never really going to do that. And I have parents in sessions all the time, and I said, do not give counterfeit yeses to each other. If you want to develop a co-parenting relationship, then just tell the truth. I'm never going to do that. Right? Like, if you know no, I know you want the bedtime or the no devices at 8 o'clock, or you only want me to do one phone call a day. That's another one too, like how much access you give the other parent.
Yes.
It's like, I want to if the child wants to talk to me, the child should be allowed to talk to me. And the other parent going like, I don't care if they talk to you, but they shouldn't be talking to you 15 times a day. And we're like, okay, that does sound a little excessive. But if the other parent's not going to really do that, don't tell them yes.
Well, and I think in that's a good way of putting it and framing it in, well, if they're talking to their friends every day, right? If they were talking to their boyfriend or their girlfriend constantly, that would be problematic as well. So what is in the best interest, right? What are the goals? What are we aligned on as parents for this child? Parental alignment.
Describe that maybe this will help the listener, well, especially the person with the question with technology and technology between houses, is tell them what parental alignment is versus co-parenting.
So parental alignment is, I may not agree exactly on how to get there, but we agree on the goal. So if I agree, if I agree that we don't want our child using drugs, they get caught with drugs, and so I might take them to a drug facility and show them people and say, look, this is what's going to happen to you if you do that. This is going to be awful. You might sit them down and show them a documentary or make them research the dangers of drugs, and their teeth are going to fall out and they're going to have sores on their face and all those things.
So one parent's documentary, the other parent's taking them to a treatment center and saying let's see these people in real time.
Mm-hmm. Which one is right?
Well, I don't know if it's a right thing. It's more of a, we're both trying to accomplish the same goal.
Exactly.
But we took a different route to get there. Like one of us took I-35, one of us took I-30. We're in Texas, guys. That's why we use those. Yeah, but but they go two different routes, but they will intersect at some point. So it's that, how are we going to get there?
But we agree on where we're going. It's just how we get there is different, and that's parental alignment. So you may not even like the person, right? Your ex or the co-parent. But
co-parents don't like each other?
It happens.
Okay.
Occasionally it happens. But it is something. I have heard that some co-parents actually can co-parent. They can actually work together.
You know what's amazing is what I see with kids, and I want parents to know this. I know this is not a co-parenting topic. I just got to say this real quick. The parents that I've experienced co-parent, or at least in the room together, working together, having the same conversation with the child, not agreeing how we get there, but aligning in the presence of the child, I watched the child's anxiety melt away in real time.
Yes.
I'm talking like in the moment. It's not like we went home and it went away. It's in the session. The kid just goes, oh, it's like this weight, this invisible case of rocks that they're carrying. They took it off.
Because they don't have to carry that anymore. Their parents get to carry that. And I think this is a co-parenting issue. Right?
Oh, yeah. Technology between home is a co-parenting issue.
It is a co-parenting issue.
Sure.
Because it all kind of factors in together. And so, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, what's the difference? You have a topic here, privacy versus transparency. Tell me about that.
So how many times, again, we're talking about teenagers or maybe even middle schoolers or even some elementary school. What's appropriate privacy?
Yeah.
And how can that privacy be manipulated or used by another co-parent or by someone else? Not even a co-parent, just there are a lot of bad people out there that are trying to get kids to keep secrets and keep things to them. And transparency is being very upfront of, look, I know you have this phone. You're only 13. You're only 12. I'm going to have the passcode to your phone, and I'm going to look through it. So is there anything on there you don't want me to, that I'm going to find?
Basically, tell me now.
Tell me now.
Before I find it.
So I can find it.
And that maintains the trust.
Or know that, you know what, periodically I might just do phone checks. That's transparent.
Or how about periodically I will be doing phone checks?
I will do, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, be transparent.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm going to do this.
Yeah. I call it the illusion of privacy.
Ooh.
I've said it. I've said it to parents. Kids aren't in the room. And I said, I'm okay with the children having the illusion of privacy, which is it feels private in its own right. Okay, here's an illusion of privacy. You put a lock on your kid's door, but you have a key to it.
That is.
So the child feels like, hey, I can lock my door. You sure can. And you can have that privacy and the door's locked. But if I really got to get in for some reason, I've got a key. Here's an illusion of privacy. We're in a building, right, where we rent space. And at any point in time, the management office, of course, they'll ask. They won't just walk in here. But if they really just wanted to walk in here, do they have a key to get in?
Yes, they do.
They do. We have an illusion, right? But we have transparency, which means we won't enter your space unless we tell you and you say yes. But if there's an emergency, something's on fire, whatever, they're coming in.
And I think kids respect that if you're upfront with them.
Right.
And you let them know, hey, this is the plan. This is what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So they know, they're aware of that. It's very, the Foucauldian who's up in the tower watching everybody.
Should parents ask their kids, how do you feel about me looking through your device?
I think it's a good conversation, but let them know that I respect how you feel. I'm still going to look through your device.
I will be doing this, but I would like to know how you feel about it. Do you think that's an appropriate conversation?
I think it is. And I think what happens too is as they get older, you're going to have a very different conversation about it.
Sure.
But I do think it's important to know where they stand. And so the danger with that I can see was if the other parent doesn't do that, right? So if the other parent doesn't have that transparency or is giving them full privacy, then it becomes dangerous.
Well, then that's a conversation between both parents. If one parent says, I'm cool with it, I don't need to dig in their stuff, don't prevent the other parent from doing it, though.
That's the conversation to have.
That's
and
right.
So that's where it goes back to that privacy and that access of, well, I have the passcode because it's my phone and it's under my plan. Yeah. And you ask for it. Well, I don't want you to have my information.
Well, the issue also is parents typically seem to not have the issue with going through the phone. It's going through the conversations. So the kid's having a conversation with dad, let's say via text, and mom's looking at it, or vice versa.
Vice versa. Mm-hmm.
But the parent seems to struggle with, I don't want you watching these conversations I'm having with my kid.
Because then you're getting into my privacy. And I think that's
the issue.
That becomes a different issue.
Got it.
Because it's well, this is my private conversation with my child, but it's being done at my home. Well, it could have been done if they're at the amusement park, if they're at the skating ring, what have you. And that's where that mistrust comes in. If I don't trust that you're going to have an up and up conversation, like a positive conversation with the child, then I'm going to be monitoring that.
So then the question would become, if you're really that concerned about the other parent seeing the conversation you're having with your kid, then what are you really up to?
If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to hide, right? Like, I'll show it.
Well, and that's why people become defensive, is because as soon as you come in and go, I want to put these, they call them boundaries, but I want to put these things in place that prevent you from looking at my conversation with our kid, then my natural antennas are going up going, well, why? What are you hiding?
What are you hiding?
Now, don't get me wrong. It feels a little icky for me to go to the other parent and be like, yeah, feel free to look at the conversations with the kid, the other dad and kid or whoever. Like, I agree. There needs to be a layer of, there's a reason you're doing it. So why don't you just be honest about that too and say, hey, I am looking at those conversations because I'm concerned that you may be saying things to our child that's pinning them against me.
I think having those conversations are important.
That's transparency.
And I think even being transparent too is saying, look, I will let you look at our conversations with the child. I don't have anything to hide either unless you do. And then it becomes not a kid issue. This is a parent issue. Then it becomes clearly not a parental parenting discipline issue. This becomes a parent issue.
So do you believe that the question that we're being asked here is the technology between homes is really a parent issue?
I think sometimes it is. I think majority of times it can turn into that.
Got it.
So even like that discussion that I brought up earlier about bringing the whole family in and discussing what that was going to look like, ultimately they could not agree. They had one phone for, I think it was a month, if that, and mom said, no, absolutely not. I'm just going to buy my own phone. Wow. And they did it that way because they tried it and they could not agree. They could not align. So they separated. They just said, fine, you get two phones.
How did the kid respond to that?
She was okay with it eventually. This child, I have to say, was pretty agreeable to her. She knew who her family was. She knew who her parents were. So she recognized that they're never going to agree. So this is just easier for everybody. Mind you, she was in 6th grade. What is that going to look like when she's 17?
So let me go back to something here. What data or information do you have, Armando, that states that kids having devices and technology has actually been extremely helpful to them in the future?
I don't know that I have any data that says exactly that. I know that there's data that says that them learning technology is helpful, but in terms of having access to it all the time, I think the data on that is still coming in because technology is so wild now, how quickly it's changing.
Well, it's not just what it is, it's how it's used. And I think that technology is you're not kidding. When you were talking earlier, and I thought it was a good point that you were making about the Nokia phone. I had one of those, by the way, too. So not to date myself.
The first version?
It was the one that went into a plastic cover, bro. Like it had a belt loop and it had like the little plastic on the front.
Clipped on?
Yeah, clipped on. I had it on my belt. Oh, I wore it on my belt. Proudly.
I could see you in high school with your little clip-on Nokia.
I wasn't even in high school, bro. I didn't get a phone until I was out of high school. I was using my girlfriend's phone.
No.
I'm serious. I go on dates. Hey, girlfriend, do you have... My parents would ask my girlfriend, do you have your phone with you? Yeah. Okay, well, if we need to get a hold of Michael, we'll call your phone. Or they would give me... My mom would give me her phone. And then on Christmas, I got a phone finally. I was 18, and I got my first cell phone. It was that Nokia. And I was super excited. Finally had my own cell phone. And then I found out it was one of those upgrade things where you buy one, get one.
Oh, so you got
my mom had the same phone, and I kind of went, wait a second. So I got a free Christmas gift, bro. Like, my parents didn't have to pay for it. They paid for my mom's upgrade and got a free one.
I have the same phone as my mom too. Actually, now that you're saying that, I think that's
you got a twofer, bro. You got a twofer.
I think that's all I got.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, like, we're fine. We're fine. It's okay. We survived. Let me kind of go through this. I want parents to hear me say the most important thing you do when you start introducing technology between homes is having a conversation of what is the purpose of this technology. Do they have an iPad for schoolwork? Is it for entertainment? What are we using this for? How will it be used? Because that's step one.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right. I think I will say this: my parents did that right in saying the cell phone is for you are getting this because of an emergency because you are driving.
Yep.
Right. You are picking up your brother from school.
It was clear.
It was clear. You're picking up your brother from school. So if there's a problem, you can call. If you're stranded on the side of the road, whatever, this is what it's for. It is not for whatever. And I think it is a responsibility that needs to be discussed. This is a next level maturity thing, and we need to have those conversations. And just because I think we run into the risk of it just being everywhere and everybody has access to it, we forget to have those conversations to teach children why they have these things.
Well, there's responsibility built into that. And when you give your kids a device, you're introducing them to the world. There's another world. There's a digital world that exists out there. This Roblox thing. Have you heard about this Roblox thing?
Oh, absolutely.
These people are tracking kids and it's crazy. My son came to me with this and goes, "Oh, Dad, look, this guy sent me a message." What guy? He didn't know.
Yeah, the guy on Roblox.
Oh, dude, I went into his deal. I was so quick. Please do me a favor. The illusion of privacy is fine. There's no such thing as privacy when it comes to devices on kids. When you're looking through your kid's devices to find some crap on the other parent, then you're using the device as a leveraging point, which puts the kid directly in the middle. If you have that kind of issue with the other co-parent, you and the co-parent need to sit down and say, hey, before I go through these messages with the kid, I really need to ask you something. I really feel like you're encouraging things, and I need to figure this out. And I don't want to have to prove it, but I'm at a point now where I think that's where I'm at. And it's almost like you're kind of shooting a warning shot in that area and saying, hey, this is the real issue. It's not the device. It's I don't trust you.
It really is that. I mean, it goes. What's interesting to that is I think about, like, even with couples that I've worked with, about one of the partners going through the phone, and the reason why they go through the phone is there's an emotional shift, right? There's a behavioral.
Oh, you're
shift.
talking about like in a relationship.
Between two partners. Got it. And so, well, I what's in their phone, right? So they start looking into their phone, and they start finding, people DMing people DMing. The podcast about ways to, but no, they start DMing people trying to figure out what's happening, and I think that comes out of mistrust or a behavioral shift.
Yeah,
and so I think sometimes there's an innocence, there's not a negative, there's not maliciousness in it when the parent looks into the phone and then they find these conversations that they're having, but sometimes it begs the question. You clicked on that message between kid and dad, or you clicked on that message between kid and mom.
Yeah.
How come?
Yeah. Why that
message? And very quickly, and I think we talked about this when we spoke about alienation, is that it can turn very quickly into that. I'm trying to protect my child from the other parent, and so what do? I cut access.
Yeah.
And so you get,
and so now and so the kid's now mad that you've cut their access. They go to the other parent. The other parent now, villainizes you for it, and then says, "See, I told you your dad's
because there was no conversation between the parents about what was being done or why they were looking at certain things."
Yeah, quit loading the gun.
You've loaded the gun. That's exactly.
And
what
now you're mad
done.
they're firing it.
Mm-hmm.
When really it just needs to be. And then the parents go, "Well, I don't know how to talk to so and so. I don't because if we could have communicated, maybe you could have stayed married. Who knows?"
I mean, that's true, but I think the one commonality is this child. If you love that kid, you can be aligned. You can not like somebody. You can disagree with them. But if you love that child, it's important that you focus on that. On how do we want our child to be raised? What kind of person do we want them to be? What kind of responsibility do we want them to have with technology?
Yeah.
And if you focus on that, and it's hard. There are no easy answers to this.
I just don't keep telling me you both love the kid, but you're not willing to do anything for the kid. I'm sorry, that's not the case. You might be that hurt, so tell me that. Mm-hmm. I'm that hurt to be vulnerable, or that's more important than saying, oh, I love the kid, because other parents are going to tell me I love the kid too.
Right.
And both of you are going to claim you love the kid, but then you got to be willing to do anything necessary for the kid.
So let me ask you this question, Michael. If you run into that and you're just saying, you know what, I can't, I've tried to talk to my co-parent, they can't do it. What do I do with this cell phone in my house? What do I do? Do I put boundaries on them? Do I put limits? Do I say you can't? What would you recommend? I have an idea, but I'm curious.
That's a great question. And I think if I'm a parent and I have a co-parent who's just not workable with me, and I'm sitting with my kid with this device, and I know that their regulations over there and my regulations don't match, first thing I'm doing is sit down with the kid and say, hey, look, these are the kinds of things I want done here with this device. However, you may not agree with me, or you may feel it's different. And I want to know what your thoughts are and what your feelings. I want to validate it. And I'm going to let my kid tell me, this is stupid, I don't like it, whatever. And I'm going to go, thank you very much. Do you have a suggestion of how we can make this better?
Having that dialogue.
I'm going to let the kid tell me. I'm not going to solve a problem you have. You're going to solve your problem. But I'm going to ask you, I see that you don't like this, okay? This is how I want to do it. What do you suggest? Since you don't like it, what do you suggest we do different? Because you might give me an idea that I could utilize from that kid. I might be like, you know what, that's a great idea. I want to try that. Because now we're going to develop some trust. I don't know if that'll work well, but it seems like a cool idea. I'm willing to try it. And now the kid's responsible for doing it well so that you can build trust with them. Or the kid realizes as they talk through it with you, like, oh, now I see why you put that there.
Right.
So that's what I would do first in the event I can't deal with the co-parent. Number two, transparency is the key for me. Don't lie to them. Don't counterfeit yes them. Okay? That's the biggest thing kids have with divorce is feeling like they don't know who to trust. Well, trust is built on being consistent.
And predictable.
And predictable. Say what you mean and mean what you say. So don't counterfeit yes them. So that's what I would do, number two. Number three, don't be afraid to institute rules even if they disagree with the other house. If the other house is going to let them have complete freedom and free will, all you can do is send a message and say, I don't think this is a good idea. It's about all you can do. And they may ignore you, but you can still preserve and protect your kid at home. And when your kid doesn't like a rule or think a rule is stupid, let them tell you. It's okay. You're still the parent. You can tell them no.
So that's everything you said is I completely co-sign with that, and that's what I was thinking.
Awesome.
Was having those dialogues with the kid, having those boundaries in your own home and saying, cool, I love that's how you do it over there. We don't do it here. I mean, it's the same thing I heard growing up. It's like, okay, little Susie does that. Little Susie, mom lets little Susie do whatever. Cool. Well, you don't live at little Susie's house. You live here.
I don't raise little Susie.
Yeah, this is you.
If little Susie jumped off a bridge, would you do it too? Remember that one? Mm-hmm. Did you get that one too?
I got that.
Okay. All right.
I got that.
Okay.
But I think that's the thing to remember is that this is our house, right? The obligations at one house are a little bit different over here, but we're going to have a dialogue about it. Mm-hmm. That transparency is important.
So let's go through this real quick to recap this. Thank you for that. What I heard, and I want you to say, no, Michael, I would do it this way, but please correct me. What I heard is saying, having a conversation with the co-parent about what is this device for?
Yes.
And how will it be utilized? So what are we doing this for? Why iPad or why a cell phone at this time? Just what are we doing? What's this for? Why is a defensive question. Just know that. Mm-hmm. You ask someone why, they get defensive. So saying, what are we using this for? What will the purpose of this cell phone be? Or what will the purpose of this? What will make sense? That's a why question, but using what? Then you say, how do we plan on doing that? Like, how are we going to fulfill once we've aligned? How are we going to fulfill that? What will that look like, basically? So how will that be done? That's step one.
That is the first step.
Yes. Step two is, how will you institute it in your own home? How are you going to fulfill that alignment that you've created with the co-parent in your own home about that device? And then the other one we didn't touch on, but I'll briefly say, is discipline.
Oh, that's a good one. I want to go back. I'm going to jump something real quickly before you get to the discipline.
Oh, go ahead.
Part.
Jump in.
So I think having that boundary and saying what the rules are going to be in your home, I think are important, but also communicating that with the other co-parent.
100%.
Saying, okay, that's what we're doing in my house. This is what we're going to do. Okay, in my house, this is what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't agree, you at least know what the rules are. So when the kid comes to complain, you can say, well, those are the rules in their house, right?
Correct. Now, here's what I've told co-parents. If a child, because I'm going to be honest, taking a kid's cell phone is taking their world. It works. Like if your kid doesn't do what you want them to do and you go, bring me your phone, oh my gosh, it's like taking a drug from them.
It is. It's taking a piece of their body. You're
dude,
chopping off an arm.
Oh, it works. Okay. But the problem is when you take the cell phone, you also take away the co-parent's ability to connect. So what I tell parents is feel free to institute your rules in your home, but do not allow there to be a space where the parent can't call the other one. Here's what parents will do. Well, the parent can call my phone. If y'all don't get along, they don't want to call your phone to call the kid when the kid has a phone.
You're blocked anyways. Sorry.
Armando.
I'm sorry.
It's we have to do that.
I'm sorry. It's true. I've seen it. But
we've seen it.
Yeah.
So what we're saying with technology between homes is feel free to use it as a disciplinary reason, but do not prevent the co-parent from having access to the kid as a result. It's not the co-parent's fault that the child has misused the device.
And that's where you can communicate and say they've lost their phone.
Yep.
You're free to call them at this time from this time because they don't have access to their phone.
Or if you're going to call, let me know so that I can make sure that the device is available for them to utilize. Like, try not to penalize them from using the device with their code. Now, the kid might get crafty and be like, well, can I get my phone back? I need to call my dad. Or can I get my phone back? I need to call my mom. And then I'd be like, well, how long did you need?
Yeah.
Yeah, feel free to sit right here, have a conversation.
Because then they're going to be like, oh, well, they're monitoring me when I'm talking to my dad or my mom.
Well, they lost their privilege. And that's why you said communicate to the co-parent in the event they lose their technological privileges.
Let them know.
Just to let them know. Right? And like, oh, no, now I'm going to get into 100 questions and be like, why did they lose the privilege? Why are you keeping access? All you got to say is they lost their privilege.
They lost their privilege.
Yep. However, they will be available to you in the event you need to talk to them. Just let me know so I can make them available, and I'll give them their device back so they can talk to you. But after it's done, they bring their device back. They have to earn their privilege back. Greatest thing I tell parents, when you discipline your kid with something, how do they earn it back? No parent answers that question well.
I believe that.
Yeah, it's like they lost their phone. I was like, oh, well, they lost their phone privilege. I was like, oh, okay, how do they earn it back? Well, they had to think through that. I was like, oh, that's not good.
When do they get it back? How do they get it back? And when?
How do they get it back?
How do
Not
they
just
get it back?
give it back. Well, when I can trust them again.
What does that look like?
See? Come on, there's got to be a path here. You don't even know your own path.
Well, and I think that's a separate podcast, like disciplines and how to create
discipline.
Write it down so we remember to do it.
Can you write that down for us, please? Thank you. Okay. Takeaways. So we went through that kind of. Mm-hmm. We had to hit the discipline piece. One was having that conversation with the co-parent, right? What is this for, and how are we going to do that? Okay, That's step one. Step two is how are you going to implement that in your home? Step three is having that conversation with your kid in advance.
Before.
Yeah, this device, this iPad, here's how it's used. This is what your dad and I agree on, or your mom and I agree on. This is how we're going to be utilizing that here. Make sense?
Yes.
And disciplinary reasons may be taken into effect, but it will not prevent you from having access to
your parent.
Yeah. You agree with that, with technology between houses?
I like that.
I think we've answered it. And for that, the individual that sent the question, thank you. We tried to cover as much of that as possible. That's why we did a whole podcast.
Mm-hmm.
However, if there was a specific piece in the question we missed, because I think the discipline one was close.
I think that's close to it. I think there's more to that. I mean, that's a whole podcast.
Oh, I believe it.
Discipline and
with anything, technology, with any kind of discipline, groundings, whatever. Send us your stuff, your questions. That's how we help you in real time. So I just want to say thank you for the question. We hope we've answered it here. But if there's more to it, let us know. That's what we're here for.
I'm not opposed to doing a part two or
do
a deep
part
dive.
Two.
Part two, we have to.
We're probably going to get into some part twos pretty quick.
Electric Boogaloo, Biggly, whatever that. What is it? Something part two, the electric whatever slide.
Boogaloo?
That one.
Is it the Boogaloo?
I don't know.
Dude, that's dating yourself, bro.
I'm going to drink my coffee.
The Boogaloo.
I'm going to drink my coffee.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We love it. This is really what it's like for us every day, just cracking jokes and laughing and talking through things. And so now you get to be a part of that world with us. And we just appreciate you being here. We love it. Send us your questions. We want to continue to serve and help. And thank you for being here. Keep moving forward.